All right, this is Gurpal Singh from Gursur Education. Once again, we welcome to you in our channel, and today's topic is going to be related to international institutions. So we have gone through from number of video series regarding business environment and international business. I think much more than sufficient we have already covered. And in this video lecture, the most important topic that ultimately relates to the regional economic integration, about which we have already delivered the lecture in detail. We have already talked about how international trade happens and how the international economic integration is made. We have talked about NAFTA, SAFTA, then ASEAN, then ADB, then after that we have talked about European Union as well. All these things have been covered. So when we talk about the major international institution which ultimately regulates and govern the international trade and monetary supply and liquidity, then we have to study about the three major international level institutions. The first is World Trade Organization, the second one is International Monetary Fund, and the last one is World Bank. So all these things have to be covered, and these are very important. I must tell you, number of times the questions have been asked relating to these things. So one by one, it shall be covered. Okay, so it may be the possibility that we shall not be able to give the information of all these institutions in a single video lecture. So one by one video lectures shall be taken, and ultimately these shall be clubbed. So this lecture can be for more than 1.5 hours. So I hope you would enjoy, because this is very important and very interesting as well, because you are going to get some kind of information regarding international institution, and that will be sufficient from our exams point of view. So now I'm just going to share the screen, and you have to enjoy. You have to see that. You have to be very careful of each and every word being said by me in this video lecture, and just enjoy that. So now if we are talking about World Trade Organization, so this is the international body. Okay, so we have systematically talked about so many things regarding world trade and business environment and international business. As far as international business is concerned, we have gone through number of series of video lectures. Like we have already studied regarding international trade, how does it happen, how it is regulated. Yesterday I taught you regarding how the process of international trade happens, in which we have already gone through from regional trade agreements, RTAs. Okay, and this had so many levels. Like we have gone through from PTA, preferential trade agreement, then RTA, FTA, free trade area. Okay, so custom union, European Union, so many things we have studied. And alongside these, all the things I taught you that whether there are some regional trade agreements, but overall, if we are talking about at the macro level, structure of management and governance of international trade, these are international bodies, and basically these are three. Okay, so the first is World Trade Organization, and second one is IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the last one is World Bank, which is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. It was known when it was established. Okay, so today's lecture we shall be talking about the first international body which governs the international trade. So each and everything is governed by this institution, how trade shall happen, and each and every country has to become its member so that it can contribute international trade. Okay, so only allowed countries to have participation in international trade are those which are the member of World Trade Organization. So we have to cover a lot of things regarding World Trade Organization. I am not sure whether this will be covered in one lecture or not, because we have to talk about its feature. Okay, after that we have to talk about its function, then its organization structure, then its policies, After that, it's a relationship with India. Then we have to talk about TRIPS trips, TRIMS, then GATT. So this is going to be all the structure of that. And this video lecture shall be in addition to what we have already gone through from in yesterday's lecture. Just to gonna share you what it is all that. So this is World Trade Organization is an intergovernmental organization which regulates the international trade. So this is the authority which is behind that. Okay. So the World Trade Organization officially, it actually commenced, or it started from 1st of January 1999. Okay. So at that time, there was one agreement named as Marrakesh Agreement, and it was signed by 123 nations, and it was signed on 15th of April 1994, and they suggested the replacement of GATT, that is known as the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. So it remained into existence for around 50 years. Okay, for around 50 years, because the idea of international trade is not new to even India. Okay, whether we have already gone through from although we have understood the new economic policy, and I have always emphasized upon the statement that the international trade in India started its supreme existence only after 1992, but that does not mean that before 1992 the international trade was zero. Okay, it's not the situation. Before 1992, if there was not the existence of World Trade Organization, but there was still a policy framework at the international level, and that policy framework was GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. Number of authors are not having any kind of similarity in opinion when it actually originated, but you can take into consideration the period of 1994 to 1995. 1944-1945. So that was the year when the idea actually started for General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, and it used to have its rounds. Okay, so I am just telling you somewhat history about that. The only reason being this topic is very important. Sometime we have experienced the historical perspective of the World Trade Organization is also being questioned. So GATT actually started when there was the international level ministerial conference happened. Okay, that was in New Hampshire, around the period of 1944-1945. Okay, so that is just an area in the United States, you can say, that the meeting was held. The idea was materialized how the international trade should be managed. So they came up with the three international bodies. Okay, so they suggested that there should be General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, after that International Monetary Fund, and finally IBRD. IBRD was International Bank of Reconstruction and Development. And GATT, you already know, I have already told you, this is General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. Then what happened? It came into existence in around these years, like from 1945 to 1948. It established as a fully international trade governing body. Okay, and it used to held its rounds. Okay, rounds after every 5 years or 4 years, or it could be any. Okay, so till the time from 1944 or 45 to the time the formation of World Trade Organization, this is 1995, for around 50 years, there had been in total 8 rounds of a General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. In all these rounds, what used to happen? All the ministries, or all the finance ministries, and all the government of the member nations used to go in a certain meeting, and in that meeting the further agenda for international trade was discussed. So in all these rounds, there were the ministerial level conference, we can say, and in that conference, the next and further international relations were discussed. So in total, there were 8 rounds, and in the final round, that was the one agreement was signed. This is known as Marrakesh Agreement. Okay, at that time, in 1995, the General Secretary of World Trade Organization was Arthur Dunkel. Okay, you can remember its name. This man is a very important. Okay, because I have experienced one time, I think its name was asked. Name was not actually asked, but it was depicted. So Arthur Dunkel, he just informed all the member nations that either you have to sign this agreement or you can just go from a general agreement on tariff and trade. Either sign or go from this international membership. Either your membership is cancelled or you have to sign that agreement. And in that agreement, it was written that the present system of international trade, that is general agreement on tariff and trade, is about to be abolished, and in place of that we are going to establish a new well established international body which shall in future regulate all the international trade relations, and that body is going to be World Trade Organization. So we can say that in compulsion or in any way, 123 nations signed that agreement, and it ultimately led to the formation of World Trade Organization. This was complete history of World Trade Organization, how it was formed. Okay, so it has its predecessor, the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. This was his predecessor. So why there was need to repeal this General Agreement of Tariff and Trade? The only reason being it had so many harsh laws. It has so many harsh laws, policies, rules, and regulations which were not in coherence with the actual situation, we can say, for the international trade. So it did not relax the international trade in a way so that it can be enhanced. Okay, so it ultimately became stagnant till 7th round. So in the final round, what happened? This man, the Arthur Dunkel, this man, he came forward with the Marrakesh Agreement, and he just told everyone that either you have to sign or your membership is cancelled. Then in compulsion, everyone had to sign, and it just finished. The General Agreement on Trade and Tariff finished, and it was replaced and succeeded by World Trade Organization. So that was history about that. It may be that whatever I'm telling nowadays, this number can be changed. You can just Google it up. Otherwise, it's not that core point which is to be asked. But I wish to tell you that World Trade Organization has total member states 164. This data is for, I think, for past year, for 2020. I prepared this particular note. So this is all about that. So if you are asking about the current affairs of all these international bodies, they are not going to ask. Never they are going to ask these kind of situations. So you should be feel lucky for this situation. So the total member states of World Trade Organization are 164. And when we talk about member state, that ultimately means the World Trade Organization has 164 countries as its members. Okay, and the headquarters of World Trade Organization is situated at Geneva, Switzerland. So this is where its headquarters is situated. Now, one by one, all the facts about World Trade Organization I am going to teach you, and if this is not covered in a single lecture, then we can be taking next as well. This is the feature details of features regarding World Trade Organization. First of all, we can simply say that this is international organization, and its very simple objective is to promote multilateral trade. Secondly, it replaced GATT. Then it tries to promote free trade. How it promotes that? It tries to remove tariff and non-tariff barriers. It requests all the member nations that you have to reduce or remove these barriers. Then it has fixed set of rules and regulation, and it has a legal status. So we can say that the World Trade Organization has a legal status. So it can give punishment to its member nations as well if they are not following these rules. And this is why it is said that this has a legal status. So its rules and regulations are mutually designed and agreed upon by member nations. Then we can say that agreements agreed by member countries are binding on all members. So each and every member has to bind by that. Okay, so there is a voting system as well. So even if you are not willing to sign or agree with a specific agreement, still you have to bind by this if this has been signed by majority of the voting holder countries. So if a member does not follow such agreements, then its complaint can be lodged with the dispute settlement body. So this is also one of the part of World Trade Organization. This is DSB, dispute settlement body. When two countries having trade dispute, they can just go for World Trade Organization and there this is settled. Then it includes trade in goods, trade in services, protection of intellectual property right, foreign investment. It includes everything. We can say World Trade Organization takes into account everything regarding international trade. Then unlike IMF or International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, World Trade is not the agent of United Nations. You would know the meaning of United Nation, okay? So United Nation is a community of the countries in the world which come together for some specific areas or issues, and these two things, these two bodies in IMF and the World Bank, these are the agent of United Nations, but World Trade Organization is not agent. This is an independent body. So unlike IMF and World Bank, there is no weighted voting. Weighted voting is not held in the World Trade Organization. Rather, equal voting rights are there for every country. One country, one vote. Okay, so when 51% votes are in favor of some specific issues or agreement, so that agreement is ultimately becomes the law or policy regulations. Then World Trade Organization has a large secretariat and huge organizational setup. Like this has a complete office. It has its branches. It has its employees. Everything is done very systematically. Now we have to understand regarding objectives of World Trade Organization. Okay, so I'm just gonna share details of these as well. So what does these do? What does World Trade Organization do? I'm going to explain. Its primary aim is obviously to implement the new World Trade Agreement so that international trade can be promoted further. Then it tries to promote multilateral trade. That means trade among many nations, not between one but many nations. Then it tries to promote free trade by abolishing tariff and non-tariff barriers. Then it tries to promote world trade in a manner so that every country benefits. Every country benefits, but I must tell you, it's not the situation. Ground level realities are far different from what we study. Then the another is to ensure developing countries get better share in advantages resulting from expansion of international trade. So it always try to ensure that if developing country, this is a developing country, is trading with some of the developed countries, then at the advantageous situation, there should always be the developing country. It tries to ensure that, but that doesn't happen. Obviously, it can never happen. Then it tries, we have to study that. To remove all hurdles of open world trading system, and use world trade as effective instrument to boost economic growth. So it tries to do that, so that the international economy, we have the separate economy. Each and every country has its separate economy, but World Trade Organization see whole of the world as a single economy, and it always try to boost that growth. Then the next is it tries to enhance competitiveness among all trading partners. Then it tries to expand all the world resources, whether this is land, this is labor, this is natural resources, air, water, or anything. It tries to improve level of living for global population. It tries to enhance the level or the living status of the general population. Then it takes special steps for development of poorest nations. Some of the poorest nations are given financial aids or economic benefits so that their level can be promoted further. Then there are some functions of World Trade Organization you have to go through. Okay, all these things contain a lot of theory. Why I'm teaching you all these things, you can also go through, but the only reason being, they can even ask you regarding objectives of World Trade Organization, and they can ask you functions of World Trade Organization. They can ask you process, they can ask you structure, anything they can ask you. So that's why just making you aware that you go through from everything. So the function of World Trade Organization is exactly similar to what we have studied under the objectives of World Trade Organization. So what does this do? It lay down the code of conduct aiming at reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers. It tries to do that. The first function is that. Then the second function, it implements the World Trade Organization agreements and administer the international trade. Then the third, it cooperate with IMF and World Bank so that the global trade policy making could be made easy. Next, it tries to settle the trade related dispute among nations. If India is having any issue with some other country, then obviously the listening authority or the government body shall be World Trade Organization. We can just put our case to that dispute settlement body. Then it tries to review trade related economic policy as well. Okay, so for that it has a separate body structure. This is known as a trade policy review body. Okay, so this is also important name. Okay, TPRB. So it has one of its branch, or we can say one of its arm as TPRB, Trade Policy Review Body. What does that do? Reviewing trade related economic policy of member countries with the help of this. Okay, so it tries to analyze the economic policies of the member countries. So whatever the economic policies are made by the country, one of its complete detail or file is to be sent to World Trade Organization as well, to this specific body. The next one is, we can say that it also provides the technical assistance and guidance as well for foreign trade and fiscal policy to its member nation. If any country wishes to frame its fiscal policy newly, then what it has to do, it simply has to take the technical assistance from World Trade Organization. Then it acts as a formation of a trade liberalization. It tries to do that as well, so that trade could be liberalized, so none kind of barriers are there. Like the most major barrier for international trade is import substitution, which is the in hand, we can say, which is the in hand power of all the nations. They always try to find import substitution, and it should not be banned completely. It should be there, because nowadays India is not practicing the great level of import substitution like other developed countries are performing. Like we can see, we can simply take the name of China. They have so many import substitution policy. You can take its example for everything. Okay, so whatever the things world are using, they people are not using. They have their own separate servers. They have their own separate, we can say they don't use the services of some well established companies of the world. Okay, like they have for all the mobile applications, they always prefer indigenously built software systems and the application system. Like all the mobile phones nowadays you are using, these are being made, more than 90% of our import are being done from this specific country, and to or made product they are not willing to import. So they are practicing this policy, but India is not practicing at that level. So this is import substitution. This is a hurdle in the way of international trade, but it should be there for a country like India, so that indigenously built goods can be promoted further. Then the next is organizational setup. I think one slide would be much more than enough for that. Okay, so if we talk about its organizational structure, I think all the details have already been given in the PDF. So it is headed by ministerial conference, and it meets every 2 years. And general council is its permanent organ. So permanent organ of World Trade Organization is general council. Then it works under the policy framework of ministerial conference. So first of all, there is ministerial conference. After that, it has next body. This is known as general council. And the general council is assisted by two bodies. The first body is DSB. This is dispute settlement body. And the next is TPRB, that is trade policy review body. So this is the structure of that. The rest of the things you can go through. Okay, like they have their offices, regional offices, they have their officers. Okay, to those you are not supposed to go through in detail, but that would be sufficient for it. Then now we have to understand that what is the impact of World Trade Organization agreements on Indian economy. These have severe effect. Okay, when Indian economy opened up, like new economic policy was come, then what happened? India had to, in compulsion, we can say, sign up all the agreements whatever was given to them. We had no other option left. So we were not at the gaining situation or gaining position. We were at the losing position as far as so many agreements are concerned. Then till then we revived somewhat. Okay, we had this graph, but nowadays I genuinely believe that being a sane student, you go through from newspapers on daily basis and you see where our economy stands right now. That's not growing this much at the level from what was expected from it in the previous years. Then signing of World Trade agreements will have a far-reaching effect, not only for India's, but for India's foreign trade, but for its internal economy as well. Although the ultimate goal of World Trade Organization is to free world trade in the interest of all nations, yet in reality, World Trade Organization agreements has benefited the developed nations more as compared to developing ones. This is always the situation, and that will be the only reason being people have more say in the international arena, and we do not have that much say. We do not have that much power. Then its impact can be further bifurcated into two parts. This is the positive and negative impact. If we are talking about positive impacts, like our exports earnings have increased. This is the first one. Our agriculture exports have also increased. Our textile and clothing exports have also increased. Multilateral rules and disciplines are nowadays there. Then service exports have also increased. You can take the example of IT sector, information technology. We are producing the number of engineers on yearly basis, and these yearly basis engineer are more than the entire population of some of the country like Singapore. Then foreign investment has also promoted in India. Talking about the negative impacts, okay, the foremost failure that it could not uphold the principle of a democracy. Like we do not have that much say in comparison with some renowned or other countries. Okay, then World Trade Organization is fundamentally undemocratic. This is fundamentally undemocratic. The countries having the high power status, the currency of which is having the high power status or high status, they have more say in all the decision making bodies. Then policy of WTO impacts all aspects of society and planet, but it's not a democratic, transparent institution. It's not they are not, even if you try to ask anything to them, they are not responsible to answer you even. Then we can say that now we shall be talking about some of the agreements. Okay, some important agreements regarding World Trade Organization which are to go through, which have been asked in the examination number of times. The first is a TRIPS. Okay, this is agreement on a trade related aspect of intellectual property rights. Okay, so this is an international legal agreement between all member nations of a World Trade Organization. So it sets down the minimum standards for regulation by national government to form intellectual property as applied to World Trade Organization. You could see that the patent system, you can take their example, patent system. We had the intellectual property. Okay, we could make it a patent, but now we have to follow the rules framed by the World Trade Organization. We had to change our laws as well. Okay, so first of all, we used to have the product patenting, but World Trade Organization emphasize on process patenting. So now that has severely impacted us, because so many intellectual property of India has been stolen by some other clever countries, we can say. So this is the trade related aspect on intellectual property right. This is one of the agreement which each and every country has to follow. Okay, and what does it do? This one line can explain that, and you have to take it into your mind. It set down minimum standards for regulation by government, national government to form intellectual property. The second, then the area of intellectual property that covers, these are some of the areas, and even I think these are 7 areas. Okay, so these areas you have to you have to keep in your mind. They can ask you the question regarding that. Okay, in the TRIPS or intellectual property, so World Trade Organization accepts 7 kinds of intellectual property. The first is copyright and related right, then trademark including service marks, then geographical indications including appellations of origin, then industrial designs, then patents including the protection of new varieties of plants, then layout designs of integrated circuits, then undisclosed information including trade secrets and test data. So all these 3 items, okay, all these 7 items should be in your mind. So these have been given under the allowed intellectual property framework as suggested by World Trade Organization. Then the next most important agreement is of TRIMS. This is trade related investment measures. Okay, so this is how the foreign investors or the foreign FDI is regulated worldwide. Okay, so agreement on trade related investment measures are rules that apply to domestic regulations a company applies to foreign investors as a part of industrial policy. So nowadays, whatever the rules we have to make regarding FDI, India has to make regarding FDI, or any country has to make regarding the foreign investment rules and regulations. We have to bind ourselves by the policy framework given by the World Trade Organization, and that policy framework is agreement on a trade related investment measure. So taking into consideration the rules framed in this specific measures, in this specific agreement, we have to make our own rules for foreign investment. So this agreement concluded in 1994 was negotiated by its predecessor, that was GATT, but it actually came into force 1995. Then the next is GATS. Okay, so this is one of the main feature of Uruguay round. Uruguay round is also the eighth. The eighth round was also known as Uruguay round. Okay, so this was the main feature of this round was the inclusion of services as well. Okay, general agreement of trade and services. So this too will go in favor of developed countries. So now the World Trade Organization emphasized that only goods and commodities should not be exchanged in international trade, but services should also be exchanged. So this is why nowadays banking, insurance, finance, accounting, auditing, and so many services are there, like IT services are there, which are nowadays being imported and exported, and this is all happening on the basis of or because of general agreement of trade and services. So these were the important things regarding World Trade Organization. Then there are non-tariff barriers. Okay, so several countries have put trade barriers and non-tariff barriers following the formation of World Trade Organization, because this is very obvious. They have completely banned the trade barriers, but you can have non-tariff barriers for which they are not going to give any kind of inspection. Okay, so but this has affected the exports from the developing countries. So Union Commerce Ministry has identified 13 different non-tariff barriers put by 16th countries against India. So now you can see that for this is a conspiracy against the developing countries, that the developed countries are putting non-tariff barriers, and these barriers like import quotas or import substitution, and these barriers do not let our international trade grow further. So this is what the situation of all the countries nowadays is. So then there is AONA. This is agreement on agriculture. So agreement on agriculture has always been in the favor of a developed countries. Doha agreement has been held for past 20 years, and still this has not been, I don't think this has been discussed fully right now, because the developing countries are always telling the World Trade Organization that justice is not being done to them. But still the AOA is based in always the favor of developed countries. The issue of food security to developing countries is not addressed adequately in AOA. The existence of global surpluses of food grains does not imply that poor countries can afford to buy. Okay, so still this is the wider gap between the developed and the developing nations. So then the inequality within the structure of World Trade, that I have already explained you. The countries having the more currency base have more power in say in all the decisions regarding World Trade Organization. Then LDC exports. Okay, so LDC, so ITC, it supports, World Trade Organization supports least developing countries system as well. So LDC export is also there. Okay, so to least developed countries, to enhance their participation, they have come up with a program of least developed countries so that their exports could be promoted or they can be financially stable. So this is LDC. This should be the feature of that. Okay, so this should not be the impact. This should be the feature of World Trade Organization. And the last one is dispute settlement body. I have already taught you it has next body. Whenever you are having any kind of dispute with any country regarding international trade, you can go to the DSP. Settlement of dispute under GATT was never ending process, but DSP was set up under World Trade Organization to plug loopholes and provide security. All right, so now this is going to be regarding International Monetary Fund. Now we have already discussed in detail regarding World Trade Organization. I have taught you that this was the international body which regulates the international trade, export, import or anything. It has so many agreements like TRIPS we have studied, TRIMS we have studied, AOA we have studied, then GATS we have studied. All these 4 agreements are very important to understand. Okay, and now in this lecture in detail we are going to talk about a monetary fund. The structure shall be same as the structure of World Trade Organization was. So in this lecture, first of all, I shall be teaching you what do we mean by International Monetary Fund, and after that we shall be talking about its function, its objectives, its powers, then most importantly the glossary of IMF. This contains some important terms, some important terminologies which are usually asked. Okay, and these terms relates to the benefits given by IMF to the member nations. So just going to teach you in detail regarding that. That's going to be interesting as well. And I must tell you, just keep into mind 2 things to understand regarding IMF. The first is the monetary policy. Monetary policy, I have already taught you in the beginning classes, beginning video lectures of business environment. We have already covered the topics regarding economic policies, and in that I have taught you regarding monetary policy and fiscal policy. And the second thing you have to keep in your mind, this is RBI, Reserve Bank of India. Okay, Reserve Bank of India. Just take into consideration these 2 major elements, and keeping these 2 in your mind, you can easily understand regarding IMF. Because what RBI do at national level, the same thing is done by IMF at international level. Now maybe you would have got some idea. Whatever RBI does in national level, the same things are done by IMF but at international level. So if we say that the International Monetary Fund is the central bank of whole of the world, then it would not be wrong to say. So basically this performs the duty of being the central bank, and what does it do? It performs some of the functions so that money or foreign exchange could be managed in a way so that each and every member benefits. So its basic purpose is to manage money or foreign exchange. Okay, so this is International Monetary Fund. Now one by one we shall be talking about all the elements to be covered in this video lecture. The first is IMF. Okay, so the International Monetary Fund is international organization, and this is situated in Washington DC, and it consists of presently 189 countries working to foster global monetary cooperation, secure financial stability, facilitate international trade, promote high employment, sustainable economic growth, and reduce poverty around the world. So from this complete definition, you would have got the idea what does IMF do. Okay, so with the combination or with we can say membership of these many countries. What does it do? It tries to do all these things to enhance or ensure the monetary cooperation, financial stability, facilitate international trade, high employment, sustainable growth, reduce poverty around the world. All these things are performed by IMF. So this is so in this way we can easily conclude. Likewise, I have written some numbers, okay, some points which can be which can further describe the role of IMF. We have written these in this way as well, okay. So what does IMF do actually? What role it performs? So first, it tries to increase the international liquidity. Obviously, it tries to revolve, it tries to make the revolution of the money or foreign exchange circle at speedy pace. Then multilateral system of international payment, it regulates this system, multilateral payment of a system, the SWIFT system or other banking system. Then the removal of exchange controls, it tries to remove the barriers, we can say the exchange barriers posed by the different countries. It tries to remove these so that the foreign exchange could be easily done. Then it tries to promote the exchange rate stability. Like exchange rate, you have already understood. I have already delivered you the lecture regarding derivatives. I have taught you $1 stands for around 70 rupee, and why this is why this is the reason that it stands at that. So how this is determined, we have gone through from theories, from all the bases completely. So if this is stable or not, this is ensured by IMF. And it always try to promote a flexible exchange rate. Flexible exchange rate, we have already studied. Flexible exchange rate means the exchange rate which is determined on the basis of demand and supply. I have taught you while teaching regarding the foreign exchange theories. Then it tries to help member countries during balance of payment crisis. If any country is having balance of payment crisis, we have gone through from this concept as well. If you remember that we have understood the disequilibrium position or disequilibrium situation of a balance of payment, in which I have taught you regarding 5 different major types of balance of payment disequilibrium. If any company is facing that, the IMF can help them. Then it provides the information relating to international environment. So what is happening around the world, how the internal things are done in an economy, all these things are all this information can be received from International Monetary Fund. And then it provides assistance, it provides advice and assistance during financial crisis. If any country is facing financial crisis, you can take our example simply. In 1992, we had to raise funds from these institutions. Then its role ultimately becomes its functions. Okay, there is none kind of a major difference between the rules and the objective and functions performed by the International Monetary Fund. The first function is obviously exchange stability. Exchange stands for foreign exchange. The second, eliminating balance of payment disequilibrium. If any member country is facing that, then they can help them come out of that situation. That determination of a par value. Par value simply stands for what should be the exact value of your country's currency. So that should be the par value. Okay, so determination of a par value is done by IMF. Then stabilize economies. It helps that all the economies are stabilized. No country is earning huge and no country is just becoming downtrodden. Okay, so it tries to stabilize all the economies so that all the developing countries in the coming years becomes the developed countries. Then it tries to give credit facilities as well. Okay, you can take the credit from IMF in any case, in any time it's needed. Then it maintains a balance between demand and supply of currencies. Whatever this graph tells you, all these things is managed by IMF, obviously. Then it maintains the liquidity. Liquidity What does liquidity? Try to understand the meaning of liquidity. Okay, liquidity simply means the readiness of money to be available to you. This is like liquidity. How it can be done? Okay, so if money is revolving, at a faster pace, then it shall be considered to be very liquid. Very liquid means it is at your disposal. You can take it anytime. Okay, so this is known as liquidity. Liquidity simply means a readiness or the provision of money whenever it is needed. This is liquidity. So maintenance of liquidity is also ensured by IMF. Then technical assistance, whenever you are going to set up new plant or new expenditure investment, technical setup is also, assistance is also given by IMF. It tries to promote the reduction in tariff so that the international investment could be furtherized. Then it generally watch your economy. It generally watch your economy and economic policies, and it go through from fiscal and monetary policies so that they can decide whether you are following the norms, rules, policies, procedure prescribed by IMF or not. Then how does it work? Okay, so first of all, we have to understand somewhat its a historical perspective. I have already given you information, New Hampshire or Bretton Woods. Okay, at this place also, the meeting was held. I have already given its information previously. Okay, so the idea was materialized to come up with 3 international institutions. The first was the first was World GATT. Okay, the second was IMF, International Monetary Fund, and the last one was IBRD, International Bank of Reconstruction and Development, which ultimately became the World Bank. That was not materialized immediately. It took number of years, but these 2 institutions, most importantly, the IMF was established in late 1940s. Okay, so there are 2 phases in working of IMF over the last 70 years. So the first phase cover the period of late 1940s to 71. Okay, so till that it had some of the rules and regulations, and ultimately gradually with the passage of time the requirements were there and it had to be changed. So its new charter was drawn in 1971, and what happened, its rules, regulation, policies, framework was changed. So the first phase was popularly known as Bretton Woods system. Then after that, IMF system over Bretton Woods system provides for exchange rate stability in short run. It provided that in the short run there should be exchange rate stability, but it allowed for possibility of exchange rate adjustment when country experienced fundamental disequilibrium in its BOP account. So what does this tell you? Understanding this only by reading does not give any kind of meaning to that. So when a country wishes to become its member, if it is having fundamental balance of payment disequilibrium, then IMF, upon joining this member country, upon the joining of this member country, it provided for exchange rate adjustment. Okay, it provided for exchange rate adjustment to the countries which were having the fundamental balance of payment disequilibrium. So that rate was known as pegged exchange rate. Okay, and that was again decided by the policy frameworks, or we can say the criterias provided by IMF. So its name was adjustable peg system. I am talking about the first phase of IMF. Okay, so which was known as Bretton Woods system from late 1940s to 1971. So I have taught you, if any country at that time wished to become the member of IMF and it is facing the fundamental balance of payment, the IMF gave them the option of adjusted exchange rate. In that, some of the benefits were to them. Then its name was named as adjustable peg system. And after that, what happened? It made an attempt to solve the problem of international liquidity. Okay, international liquidity was the problem at that time, because so many countries are very much reluctant for for indulging in the international trade just for the promotion of that. They came up with the idea of international liquidity, and they came forth with a very important and very we can say with a very artificial currency, which is known as a special drawing rights, or SDRs. Special, they came up with that. Okay, so it ultimately boosted up the liquidity to the level that in within years the international trade became manifold. So special drawing rights were is simply an artificial currency that was created in 1969 as a foreign exchange reserve, so that the developing countries can be benefited. So SDR allocations are made to member countries to finance the BOP deficits. So whenever there are balance of payment deficit, so the upon the request and upon the quota available to a specific country, SDRs could be issued, and till today these can be issued. Then now it's not this much needed. Okay, from the exam point of view, it would be much more than sufficient. But the thing is, you cannot skip the glossary of IMF or International Monetary Fund. I am going to talk about some important terms regarding glossary of IMF. What does it contain? It simply contains the benefits which it has provided to the member countries. Okay, the benefit. So these benefits are of the nature so that it gives the monetary or fiscal assistance to the member countries, and it tries to boost up their economy. So whatever the benefits of International Monetary Fund are, these have been contained in the glossary of IMF. So I know that it would not be feasible to go through from all the glossary of IMF, because it contains so many items, but the important one we have already covered in this lecture and in the notes as well. So the first is BS. BS stands for burden sharing. This is the first item. So it was established in 1986. Since its establishment, this is a temporary financing system in which equal amount is obtained from debtor and creditor member by increasing rate of charge and reducing the rate of remuneration respectively. So that so whenever two countries are involving in the borrowing or lending of loans, then some amount they have to pledge with the IMF, and that was known as burden sharing. Okay, so why it was used? It was used to cover the shortfall in IMF's regular income from unpaid charges. Okay, sometimes they had the shortfall, so IMF had the shortfall of the income. So to cover that, you had to pay the amount to IMF. And the second reason was to accumulate precautionary balances against possible credit default. If there is any kind of credit default by any country, to accumulate those balances, these were created. So this was this is very oldest strategy of IMF, so that they are not short of funds ever. So they receive funds from both of the parties which are indulging in any kind of international finances sharing. The second is a CCR trust. Okay, so this is Catastrophic Containment Relief Trust, that was established in 2015. This is the next most important benefit. So it was established in 2015. CCRT allows IMF to provide grants for debt relief for poorest and most vulnerable countries hit by catastrophic natural disasters such as massive earthquakes or public health disaster like life-threatening, fast-spreading and epidemics or anything. Okay, so whenever a country had to pay some funds to some other countries, and if they are not in a position to pay that amount due to the reason of catastrophic natural disaster, then IMF could help them they created a trust, okay, a separate account. This is known as Catastrophic Containment and Relief Trust. The next one is ELRIC, ELRIC, okay, that stands for, so this is the acronym that summarize the assessment used to evaluate adequacy of 5 key areas of control and governance within the central bank. Okay, so ELRIC stands for External Audit Mechanism, Legal Structure and Autonomy, Financial Reporting, Internal Audit Mechanism, System of Internal Controls. So this was about that. Okay, so not for IMF itself, but it regulated the ELRIC system for the member countries as well. So this was established in a way so that each and every member country, like if we are taking the example of India, RBI should have all these key elements should be possessed by central bank of all the member countries, so that the money exchange or the money liquidity can be ensured better and further. Then emergency assistance in 1962, it was created. Okay, so this emergency assistance in the form of purchases to help members to overcome balance of payment problems arising from sudden unforeseeable natural disaster. Okay, so to them they give the natural emergency assistance as well to the countries which experience these kind of situations like floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, and droughts. Then the next one is ECF. This is extended credit facility. This is also important. Okay, extended credit facility. So ECF succeeds the poverty reduction and growth facility. Before ECF, there was one more program that was PRGF. That was poverty reduction and growth facility, as IMF's main tool for providing medium-term support to low-income countries. So whichever are the developing countries, to help them, they extended the next of their initiative, that next facility, that was extended credit facility. The next one is EFF. This is extended fund facility. So this is different from the previous one. So this financing facility provides a longer term assistance. The previous one was for the shorter and medium term support, but this is for longer term assistance to support member structural reforms. So that structural reforms are being, what are structural reforms? Like India has adopted LPG system. That was a complete structural reform. If any member country is taking the structural reform, so for that, they could experience medium or longer balance of payment difficulties. So that facility was introduced by IMF. So EFF can be adopted for up to 4 years with the structural agenda and annual detailed statement policy for next 12 months. So upon some of the conditions, the extended fund facility could be provided to the member nations. Then this is the GAB. This is General Agreement to Borrow. GAB has been placed since 1962, and this was originally conceived as means by which industrialized countries could stand ready to lend IMF up to the specified amount of currencies. So whichever are the developed countries, so they were requested to assist or to give money to the International Monetary Fund as and when required, and they always stood for that. So GAB is a general agreement to borrow. It's not that the country is borrowing, it's that the IMF can borrow anytime from the industrialized countries on the basis of the quotas given to them in the decision-making body. Then this is MDRI. This is Multilateral Debt Relief Initiative. Okay, so it was launched to complement a heavily indebted poor countries like the countries of Africa. So this initiative provided 100% relief on eligible debt to group of low income countries from 3 multilateral institutions. If they have taken funds from IMF, from IDA, from AFDF, so if they have taken a loan or taken funds from that, and still they are heavily indebted countries and they are poor countries, they are not in a position to pay the money back, then this initiative was taken. This was multilateral debt relief initiative. Then the next is phasing. Okay, this practice is of making IMF's resources available to its member in installments over a period of an arrangement. So whenever you need some kind of funds or some kind of any other sources, then what you do, what IMF used to do, it came up with a phasing facility. This is that instead of giving the facility to the member countries in one go, they used to give the benefits of that facility in installment. This is known as phasing system. Then PSI, this is policy support instrument. PSI is a non-financial instrument established by IMF's executive board in 2005 so that it can support low-income countries that do not want or need IMF's financial assistance but seek to consolidate their economic performance. Okay, so what is that? When some countries are facing the balance of payment disequilibrium, but they do not need any kind of financial assistance from any other country, then the IMF can still support them with policy support instruments. So they can support that member country in making their policies. Okay, so whether they are coming up with the fiscal policy or monetary policy, the IMF can support them in making them. So it can come up with the good ideas. After that, there is PCDR. This is Post Catastrophe Relief Trust. PCDR trust was established in 2010. It allowed IMF to join international debt relief efforts when poor countries are hit by more catastrophic of natural disaster. This is just an extension of what we have already done previously. Okay, so these are some of the trust, some of the glossaries, and the next is the same in this line. This is Poverty Reduction and Growth Trust. In July 2009 it was established. What you have to do, just their key point or key line you have to understand, and after that you have to remember or cram their extension or their abbreviations. Okay, like PRGT stands for Poverty Reduction and Growth Trust. So it was established by the executive board, approved a new concessional finance framework under which new Poverty Reduction and Growth Trust replaced Poverty Reduction Growth Facility. Previously it was that, but it was succeeded by this specific trust, and it approved the concessional finance system. So on a concession, the financial assistance was given to the member countries, whoever is in need. Then SDR, I have already taught you, this is an artificial currency. You can withdraw from the IMF at any time being a member country of IMF, just in order to supplement your reserves assets. What are reserves? Reserves are just the foreign exchange reserves. If you are feeling shortened for that, you can just withdraw the SDRs, and these are issued by the IMF on the basis of the quota held by you in the IMF. Quota is just the portion or the proportion of your membership, on the basis of your membership reserves. So international reserves asset created by IMF in 1969 as a supplement to existing reserves assets. Then standby arrangement is there. Okay, so SBA, so a decision of IMF by which a member is assured that it will be able to make purchases from general resources account up to specified amount and during a specific period, so long as the member observes the terms specified. So this is standby arrangement. One member country approaches to IMF that in time of needs, there should be available to me some general resources account from which I shall be able to take funds or finances, and I should be able to make any kind of international purchases for a specified amount and specified period. This facility is again provided on the basis of a quota held by the different country, and this is known by standby arrangement, SBA system. Then this is standby credit facility, okay, SCF. So this arrangement supports a program that enable members with actual or potential short-term balance of payment needs. So whenever a country is feeling that kind of needs, short-term balance of payment need, or maintenance of that, or restore of a stable and sustainable macroeconomic position, they can just take the funds, standby funds from the IMF. But first of all, they must have the follow-up of rules and regulation policies. They must have the quota, and they must have received the paid membership of this facility. Okay, so standby credit facility, whenever a country feels that in the next year or in the coming time it can be in the need of a short term of a balance of a payment assistance, there should be readily available fund facilities for that country, and that readily available fund facility is known as a standby credit facility. So I think we have studied much more than needed. So this is all about the IMF, I think. All right, so now this lecture is going to be regarding World Bank. This is most important and can be considered to be the third organism or the third element which is important. Okay, so when we talk about international institutions which nowadays or which have been working for the governance and regulations of money supply, international trade and liquidity around the world, these were only three. Okay, the first was the major institution, that was World Trade Organization, and its functions and prime responsibilities are to ensure the free flow of goods and services and the promotion of international trade. And the next one was International Monetary Fund, and its prime responsibility is to ensure the international liquidity and management regarding the foreign exchange and helping the member countries whoever is facing any kind of balance of payment disequilibrium. We have covered all the details regarding these two, and the last one is World Bank, about which we are going to cover in this specific lecture. I hope you have got idea. Now I'm just going to share the screen and I'm just going to move one by one to all the slides. And I must tell you, reading and learning about World Bank is not that much in data. Okay, although there are so large details regarding World Bank, but we have to restrict our study material to satisfy the requirement of our exam only. So that's why in comparison of World Trade Organization and IMF data, whatever we have gone through, the data of World Bank is not that much large. Okay, I think around 15 to 16 slides would be there, and this topic shall be covered. So World Bank, it was originally created as, I have told its name many times. Okay, that was IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. I told you that after World War II, Bretton Woods system and the meeting of the international major persons or personas that was held in New Hampshire, and they came up with the idea of a formation of three institutions basically. Okay, three institutions. The first was obviously that was GATT. Okay, the second was IMF, and the last one was IBRD. Its idea got materialized in around 1944 and 1945. So originally it was created as International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, and that was created in 1944 along with its twin IMF. So these two things like IMF and IBRD, these are famously known as Bretton Woods twin sisters. Okay, twin sisters. This is a very important word. Exam can ask you, I think once this question was asked, okay, which are the twin sisters of Bretton Woods system? So these are IMF and IBRD. The only reason being these were at the time when the idea got materialized, immediately all the world leaders decided that we should not make further delay for the formation of these institutional bodies. So they just made it. But the idea of GATT was not materialized at immediate time, in a time contemporary to the formation of IMF and IBRD. It got formed after I think 2 or 3 years, like in the year 48 and 49, something like that. Okay, so around that period GATT was formed. So this is the reason why IMF and IBRD are considered to be the Bretton Woods twin sisters. Then now we have to cover its World Bank's function, and after that, most important and the major and the last point shall be World Bank's organs. Okay, World Bank's organs, or we can say World Bank's arms. There are 5 arms of World Bank, about which I shall be giving a detail. But first, I think we should cover the functions of World Bank. The first function is it grants the long-term loan for all the member countries. Okay, all the member countries, and this is also the agency under the United Nations, like IMF and World Bank are both the agencies under the United Nations. The first work or the first function of it is granting long-term loans, and second is provision for technical assistance. Any country who is facing or who is going for a reconstruction period, then what has to do, it need number of assistance, and the technical assistance is provided by World Bank for having development related works. Then it also provided technical trading to the member countries. Okay, it provides technical trading for any kind of use of materials, capital, and the other assets. Then it coordination of a development aid along with the lines of the benefits provided by International Monetary Fund. It cooperates with the IMF for giving development aids to the developing nations or the poorest nations who are not able to come out of their balance of payment disequilibrium. Then it also tries to do economic research. What is economic for whole of the world? Okay, economic means economic use of all the natural resources, economic use of all the products available around the world, each and everything they consider at economy level, world economy level. Okay, so they just make economic research as well, so that proper and sufficient efficient use of all the resources around the world could be made sure. Then providing financial help to international institutions. This also provides that in case IMF need any kind of a financial assistance, they can go to World Bank as well. And in case other international institutions like Asian Development Bank or any other organism of we can say international trade like World Trade Organization and these kind of institution, if they in any time they need any kind of financial aid, then World Bank is always there. Now what we have to do, I have already told you that World Bank has its 5 arms. 5 arms, 1, 2, then 3, then 4th and 5th. There are 5 arms of World Bank, and these are considered to be the family of World Bank. So we can say World Bank is different from a World Bank group, an extended family of 5 international organizations. We can simply say that this is the World Bank is the part of 5 international organization, the name and the details of which I am going to tell you right now, and I must tell you each and every part is necessary for you. Okay, so the first arm is IBRD. IBRD is obviously the World Bank. Okay, so this is the first. So this is the first in the part of World Bank Group family. So this family has 5 members, we can say, and the first member or the major member is IBRD. This is World Bank. So this is International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. This is an international financial institution that offers loans to middle income developing countries. The IBRD is first of 5 member institutions that compose the World Bank Group. And this is headquartered in Washington, D.C., United States. So this is that, okay. So its headquarter is there. So that much detail is necessary for you, I think. So IBRD is the first member in the family of World Bank Group. The second one is IDA. IDA, this is the second member. This is International Development Association. This is an international financial institution that offers concessional loans. Okay, so this is their function. So they offer concessional loans and they grants to the world's poorest developing countries, like the countries of Africa or some other regions as well. So whichever the countries, developing countries, need concessional loan services, that institution or that association, the name is International Development Institution, that is helping to all those countries. The IDA is a member of World Bank Group, and this is also headquartered in Washington, D.C., United States. So we have covered 2, okay. The first one was IBRD, and the second is International Development Association. The third one is, so this is somewhat more detail for IDA, okay. This was established in 1960 to complement the existing International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So IBRD was supposed to perform all the duties, but it got burdenized. So this is why some more family members were added from time to time. For the first time in 1960, the first member was added. That was the separate institution or association, but that was part of World Group as whole, World Bank Group as whole. That was IDA, and nowadays it has taken the responsibility of lending to developing countries which suffer from lowest gross national income and which are suffering from trouble credit worthiness or lowest per capita income. So this is the responsibility of IDA, that it being the group of World Bank, it helps these nations to come out of the hazardous situations. The third one is IFC, that is International Finance Corporation. So the International Finance Corporation is an international financial institution that offers investment, advisory, and asset management services to encourage private sector development in developing countries. So their prime focus is to develop the private sector. I must tell you, you must know that which organ or which element or which family member of a World Bank Group do what. Okay, so this is the most important detail which you must be aware of. The exam can ask you. So the duty of International Financial Corporation is to ensure the development of a private sector in the developing countries. Okay, so for development of a private sector, what do? They try to offer investment, they try to offer advisory services, and they try to offer asset management services. So this is also headquartered at Washington, DC, United States. So these were three. I think two more are left. After that, it shall be over. So if we are talking about further detail of IFC, it was created in 1956. So this is known as a private sector arm of World Bank Group, so that it can advance economic development by investing in for profit and commercial projects for poverty reduction and promoting development in countries. So that is the detail regarding IFC. Then the fourth institution or the fourth family member of World Bank Group is MIGA, MIGA. That is Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. So Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency is an international financial institution that offers political risk insurance and credit enhancement guarantees. So you can see, you can just get to know about their functions from this very line. So these guarantees help investors protect foreign direct investment against political and non-commercial risk in developing countries. So whenever the developing countries are making some kind of FDIs, but suddenly if they stops, then what shall the other country do? It should have some option, okay? It should have to be protected from these kind of sudden changes. And how these sudden changes happens? These happen on the basis of changes in the political structure of that very country. So this is what this is the kind of insurance what is provided by MIGA, and it also tries to promote the credit enhancement guarantees. So MIGA is a member of World Bank Group. This is also headquartered in Washington, DC, United States. This is, I must tell you that may be looking funnier, okay? All these institutions are situated in Washington, DC, United States of America. So now you can simply see that each and every major institution, international institution, is headquartered in United States America. So ultimately these kind of things make some countries superpower. Okay, so this is also one of the reason that these kind of countries, or we can say United States, this is a superpower, and they have much more say than any country around the world. I hope you have got the idea regarding MIGA. The last one is the last arm or the last member of World Bank is ICSID, that is International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes. So you would have got by its name only its purpose. Okay. So what its purpose is? This is an international arbitration institution that was established in 1966, and its purpose is for legal dispute resolution and conciliation between international investors. Okay. Like somebody is giving the FDI, somebody is receiving the FDI relating to these kind of issues. Like if any party to the contract feeling any kind of grievance, then they can simply go to this very institution. Okay. So when you have to settle your investment, foreign investment related disputes, this is the agency to which one can go. So ICSID is the part of World Bank, and this is funded by World Bank Group, and obviously this is headquartered at Washington, DC, United States. That becomes easy for us to study. So if we are talking some further detail of ICSID, this is an autonomous multilateral specialized institution that encourages the international flow of investment, and it mitigates the non-commercial risk by a treaty drafted by International Bank for Reconstruction and Development's executive directors signed by member countries. So there was a treaty made in the very year 1966 when it was formed, and this treaty was signed by all the member countries. And this, in this treaty, the major function of ICSID were explained, and that includes the encouragement of international flow of investment, and in case of any kind of investment related dispute, these are handled by ICSID. I think that was much more than sufficient detail regarding the World Bank, and this was the third arm of all the international bodies, which for the past 50 years, more than 50 years, which are regulating the whole world economy. Okay, so you can simply say that if these does not exist, world trade or international trade can never exist. So this is what these institutions do. These are World Trade Organization, IMF and World Bank. And I hope you would have got the complete required detail from our exam point of view for all these institutions.